Hey everyone. So my name's Nathan Provost. Currently, I'm a doctorate student here at Liberty. So for this first discussion board, I understand that we're supposed to be analyzing a dissertation as well as possibly a thesis that comes directly from one of the university's databases. And the dissertation and thesis that I chose is strictly based off my own future dissertation, which is about myths that surround the Battle of Cold Harbor and the Civil War. I focus primarily on Ulysses Grant's leadership, as well as casualty rates, desertions, and even the fighting that takes place after June 3rd. So before I go too long into my own dissertation, the two primary dissertation, the one dissertation I'm focused on as well as the thesis, the dissertation actually comes from Adam Petty, who just recently released a book. He published his dissertation, and it's now a book. And it's called Virginia's Wilderness, Investigating the Landscape of War. And he strictly focuses on the memory of the wilderness versus the history, meaning he's focused on how historians and veterans of that battle, which took place during the Overland Campaign, later wrote about that battle. It was focused more on 2020 hindsight than actually the topography of the battle. The exaggeration comes from post writings about how thick and dense the forest actually was. When it turns out that was not the case, he ends up concluding that most of the primary sources he uses in that time do not cite that. And he also cites things like the official records that are reports. So he even talks about how Lee didn't even want to fight there, meaning Lee was not going to trap the Union Army in the wilderness. That was never his plan. He didn't necessarily want to engage them then and there. And he also, on page 14, he also uses William Swinton. He actually said in an interview recently that William Swinton is someone that he really came to appreciate for his primary source work because he gives a lot of good qualitative data in terms of what the wilderness was actually like. And he even William Swinton even hits on the memory of the wilderness on page 14 of his dissertation. So a lot of his analysis and data comes from certain histories, primarily primary sources, but of course, he visited plenty of archives, so he has plenty of collection pieces. I mean, this work is 243 pages for a dissertation, which is very impressive by itself. So no wonder he published it. Now, I want to shift gears into the next thesis, which is Ulysses S. Grant, Study of Personality and Leadership, and that's by Peter Del Negro. And so this is actually a master's thesis, so this isn't a dissertation. It's not nearly as long. But he primarily focuses on a secondary work called American Ulysses that's written by Ron White. The popular one has been written by Ron Chernow, but there was another biography of Grant that was published by someone by the name of Ron White. It's also a great study, and personally, I think it's a better study than that of Ron Chernow, but I digress. However, his work focuses on the external and intrinsic factors that influence Grant's leadership throughout his life. And on page 6, he actually focuses on John Keegan, who wrote The American Civil War, A Military History. He was a very famous military historian. And he really focuses on Grant's leadership style and his ability to view the terrain. So on page 6, he uses John Keegan's analysis of Grant, where he talks about how Grant could analyze the environment and just make a quick determination of something. Basically, that's like the coup d'oil, the inward eye, a comprehensive view of things, and make a quick decision on it. And so Grant ultimately, that's more of an intrinsic value, a gift that was given to Grant. He had that from the beginning, but it grew based on the more external factors later on in his life, whether that's the war, whether that's facing the Ku Klux Klan when he was president, so on and so forth. But ultimately, what Peter Del Negro finds is that equally they both had a large influence on his leadership style, and especially later on when he was president. So these two, this thesis and this dissertation, uh, ultimately helps me understand their research style. Uh, Peter Del Negro doesn't utilize the collections pieces the same way that Adam Petty does, but I understand that there is a difference between a master's thesis and a dissertation. And so I think that's something that we really need to take into account where we are personally at, whether we're here going on getting our master's or here to get our dissertation, to look at the styles that they use. And I would encourage anyone to actually look at both a master's thesis and a dissertation to see the real difference. But I hope you enjoyed this talk, and I look forward to listening to all your work as well. Thank you.